So hello and welcome to the AI in Team Productivity, The Future is Now webinar organized by Future Processing in partnership with the Strategic Business Alliance. My name is Anna Mleczko and I will be the host of today's meeting. We have three amazing speakers who will share the knowledge on AI. I'm sure that thanks to them, you will find the meeting interesting and inspiring. The first speaker is Alison Connelly-Flores, Chief Medical Information Officer at WilkinGuttenplan. Hello, Alison.
Hi, how are you?
I think everyone is really well here. Thank you for being with us. The second speaker is Karolis Matulis, the manager at WilkinGuttenplan. Hello, Karolis.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here. Great to have all the folks joining us to listen to the presentation today.
Yeah, and the third speaker is Arek Skuza, the US Strategy Director and Principal AI Strategist at Future Processing. I'm sure that the best way to introduce you is to give you a possibility to share some information on your background and experience. So I will give you a moment. Alison, can you share some information on yourself and your background?
Sure, and I will talk a little bit about the organization. I think it gives it context. So I work at Urban Health Plan, where I've been for over 24 years. I work as a physician assistant there in the infectious disease clinic, seeing patients, and I'm also the Chief Medical Information Officer, as you mentioned, responsible for deploying all new technology, overseeing the technology, and trying to increase access for our patients. So Urban Health Plan has been around for a little over 50 years, and we are a joint commission accredited network of community health centers serving about 88,000 patients and 425,000 visits in some of New York City's poorest neighborhoods, including the South Bronx, Central Harlem, and Corona, Queens. And what's important to note is that we provide care to all patients regardless of their ability to pay. We have 12 clinical sites, 12 school-based health centers. We provide primary care, including OBGYN, pediatrics, dental, 18 subspecialties, diagnostic imaging, including mammography, ultrasound, X-ray, and DEXA. And I think what's so important is that we really try to be a leader, even though we don't have the budgets that some of these large academic medical facilities have or private practices have. We really try to be a leader in the FQHC world and provide care to our patients using cutting edge technology. And we try to really always implement technology that will help improve access to care, improve health equity, provide tools to empower providers, and improve patient outcomes, and really try to reduce costs whenever possible.
Thank you, Alison. I'm sure that you will share a lot of information on how technology that you mentioned can be used in healthcare industry. So I can't wait to hear your perspective on that. Karolis, would you please say something about yourself and the background that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Karolis Matulis. I'm with WG. I'm, I guess, officially a tax manager by day, tech nerd by night. So WG is a full service accounting firm. My main focus is real estate taxation. But our firm kind of handles everything, soup, nuts and bolts, everything in terms of, audits, tax services, international tax, outsourced accounting, all of that. My personal role is I am on the Innovation Council at the firm. So we're kind of tasked at looking at new technologies and how they impact our profession and kind of incorporating them into our day-to-day. Outside of the firm, I chair the emerging tech group at the NJCPA, where I share some similar role in terms of educating professionals on new technology that's coming out.
Thank you, Karolis. So we have healthcare, we have real estate and taxation. And Arek, I know that you are a tech person, being consultant to various industries, but can you share some more information on yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Happy to say so. Sending hugs from Dallas, Texas, where I'm based. I'm a U.S. consulting director in Future Processing. We are a 1,000 people company And the beautiful thing about us is that our consulting unit that I'm leading and responsible for is working on recommendations and preparing customers for getting ready for AI, ML, and data science in solutions, and then working together with our execution team, we just put that into action, which means we are responsible for what we're recommending. Down to the earth guys here in Dallas, working with the really like realistic cases of using Gen AI and AI. So we know pros and cons about that. We have a whole bunch of lessons learned, and we help and work with our customers hand by hand to get this beautiful thing like AI working. So I'm also a board member of Tech Titans. This is a North Texas organization that is educating, connecting people, and explaining what AI is. So we do a lot of stuff also on the education part. Thanks a lot. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Arek, for sharing your background. And I think we can officially start the webinar and going into the theme that we have for today's meeting. The webinar will last to about 1 hour with 40 minutes of discussion between our speakers and 20 minutes for the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please share them in the chat as our speakers will answer them after the discussion. And we would love to share the webinar with those who couldn't join us today. So I just want to inform you that the webinar is recorded. I hope it's not a problem for anyone. We have different speakers from different industries, and we know that all industries can benefit from AI, and we are talking about AI in whatever industry we are from. So each of you, let's say our speakers, can you share insights regarding your current AI experiments and elaborate on specific cases where AI has added significant value to your work? Alison, could you share something from your industry, from your company?
Sure. So there's a few different things we're doing right now. One of the projects we've undertaken was to try to reduce our no-show, the number of patients that no-show to appointments. And the reason in healthcare, and specifically our facility, that this is so important is a high no-show rate leads to really reduced access to appointments. Patients that need to be seen at the time they need to be seen aren't able to get one. One of the ways that a lot of health centers or facilities deal with this is by overbooking patients. So overbooking is okay unless all the patients show up, right? So that translates into a problem. It results in increased wait times, decreased patient satisfaction, and more stress for providers and staff. Another problem with overbooking is that it really wastes time and resources because we're prepping charts, we're doing pre-visit planning on those people that have appointments for the day. And if we spend time prepping those charts and they don't come in, it's times that we could have been spending doing something else. Also, there could be poor clinical outcome measures. It's hard to improve the quality measures for patients that aren't coming in consistently. And finally, and most obviously, it leads to a loss of revenue. So one of the initiatives we undertook was to try to reduce our no-show population for our high-risk no-shows. And that was very, very successful. Another project we're working on is using AI to help diagnose dermatologic conditions. Our patients may not always have access or the resources to see a specialist that we don't offer. So a dermatologist is one of those specialties we don't currently have. So using this AI tool, it assists the provider in diagnosing the condition. It lists out a differential based on a picture you take of the image. So it's tremendously helpful at the point of care in being able to treat the patient that's in front of us. Finally, the other sort of AI tool that we're using that I find very exciting is diabetic retinopathy screening. If those of you that are not familiar with diabetic retinopathy, according to the CDC, about 1 in 3 patients with diabetes have diabetic retinopathy, but are not aware of it because it's typically symptom-free. It's the leading cause of blindness and low vision in the United States. So we started a program to screen our diabetic patients. We have over 8,500 diabetic patients and only 2 optometrists. So clearly all of those patients can't be seen. And of the patients we've screened thus far, about 22% of the patients we've tested actually had diabetic retinopathy. So this is key for these patients to be able to prevent blindness, where we're able to now really hone in on the patients that need to be seen by a specialist.
Thank you, Alison, for sharing these real-life cases. I believe that when it comes to healthcare, it's something interesting for all of us. And it's great to know that AI can help. We all know that there are not enough doctors, not enough specialists. Karolis, I can see that you have a question, yeah?
Yeah, I got a question. So this is something that I feel like I'm very curious about in terms of, you know, kind of data security, because it's something that we all wrestle with, at least internally, in terms of using client data, kind of confidential data in the AI models. In the context of healthcare, I guess, how do you guys manage the HIPAA laws and data security issues with that, and how have you reconciled kind of, I guess, the limitations that HIPAA places on you with the training of the models?
Sure. So these are companies we've worked with. So specifically, the no-show was in conjunction with our electronic health record vendor. So that's all within our walls. That data is not going out anywhere. It's being used really to identify, using AI algorithms, to identify patients that are high risk for not showing. Additionally, with the AI for diabetic retinopathy screening, that is with another vendor, obviously, that we have a BAA with, that I believe most of the vendors we work with, we try to make sure they're high trust certified. I have to just double check that one. I just don't recall off the top of my head, but we are treading very slowly. We're not jumping into ChatGPT, and obviously you can't put in any patient identifiers into that information. So I think all of these things are currently, the rules are still being laid out, and that's why we are entering into these relationships cautiously and slowly, because of course that's paramount. Security, patient security, and confidentiality is crucial.
Thank you, Karolis, for your question. Of course, when it comes to personal data, especially in healthcare, I believe that the security is extremely important. Karolis, can you say something about how you use AI in WG, in your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, you know, confidentiality is something that we kind of wrestle with also. You know, it's important to kind of have barriers around the data. I would probably split the AI use kind of into maybe two categories. You know, the latter category is what really took off, and that's generative AI within the last year. You know, AI is not something that's new. The math and the stats and all the theories behind the models has existed, you know, for 50, 60 years. And in recent years, we've had adequate compute to be able to tackle these types of projects. But I think generative AI has really pushed this in front of everybody in a way where it resonates, because you're able to type in, you know, a question into what appears to be a search engine. The promise of Ask Jeeves has kind of been realized. Now we have the ability to ask, you know, a kind of a word prompt, the question, and get a natural text answer. So I think that's really kind of inspired a lot of people to look into AI. From kind of using it in business, I think the generative AI is most useful kind of in what I'll call the generation buckets in terms of generating content, whether that's marketing content, or emails. It's a big kind of force multiplier in terms of being able to kind of generate large swaths of text in one go. We personally have seen a great deal of productivity increases from the use of generative models such as ChatGPT and some of the Copilot products that existed before it in our development practice with our IT folks. So they're able to write much more code in much less time than they used to be able to. Kind of on the professional services side, emails, responding to emails, generating emails, kind of figuring out ways to say things that are difficult has never been easier with the aid of something like a ChatGPT. In the older models, what I'll call, the pre-generative AI models, where you can make a prediction, we've been experimenting with, for example, I guess the most tangible example that folks could kind of resonate with is within our community real estate association practice. And that would be generating footnotes based on financial information for the financial statements that we produce. Generative AI is helpful for that, but on the kind of audit front, we're able to make predictions, for example, for what snow removal costs would look like based on precipitation in particular areas where our communities are located, and what we would expect a reasonable amount of cost would be associated with the precipitation that fell in that particular community. So that's a way that we can kind of cut down on the audit procedures that we're performing just by creating predictions that then we can kind of test against the actuals. So there's been a lot of kind of progress on that front.
Thank you, Karolis, for sharing these real-life cases on team productivity, actually, because I think that everyone have tried and everyone uses sometimes ChatGPT in terms of generating text or analyzing text. We're all checking it in and out to see if it will really help us in our work, if it can accelerate the time that we spend. And I'm sure, Arek, you can share some info on that. I know that you use various tools connected to AI, so please do.
Yeah, we breathe in, breathe out AI, and it's a really bread and butter for us. Not because we are fancy and advanced, it's because our customers are actually looking for a great use cases and things like that. So it's our everyday job to find a real problem. By the way, we always try to repeat to our customers that we should define the problems and check if the AI can solve them, not the other way. Because nowadays we can use AI quickly through Bard, Perplexity, Claude, or ChatGPT. So people sometimes come up with problems that are not really AI things. So I'm trying to say that we don't always think that AI is a solution to everything, or machine learning, or predictions. But anyway, sharing the cases, I want to blend couple ones that we use in future processing. So for instance, one of the things I found fascinating and very useful and very executable, like you can really execute that and make the AI working for you, is like chatbots that help you to make a decision. So one of the solutions we built for our partners and customers was as a chatbot that helps you to make a decision about which charity you want to donate or which NGO you want to support. So basically you can come up and just talk to the chatbot, and the chatbot will, I don't want to say ask you questions because that sounds like a really dumb chatbot. It will actually put the logic in play and walk you through the process that helps you to define which charity you want to support based on your preferences, beliefs, like your worldview and things like this. But if you really think about it, it's a solution that actually in a very logical way helps you to make a decision. So it comes to a cognitive decision making, and it's a AI powered tool, this chatbot, that is actually guiding your process. It can help you make a decision about charities, but also about like sales effort allocation, budget allocation, and things like that. So that's one thing that is really working. As I mentioned it when I was introducing myself, we are down to the earth guys. So I only want to share examples that are that actually right there works. And the second example is like also our solution for like checking and non-disclosure agreements. As a consultant, we signed a lot of NDAs because customers are pushing a lot of data on our side. So all these NDAs needs to be actually aligned with future processing corporate governance. And not only penalties, but other paragraphs and conditions that we need to make sure that are aligned with future processing corporate governance and policies. So we built a tool that helps us to quickly compare the specific document with our corporate documents. And this corporate documents is a set of documents, which means it's not one document. So basically, we remove a lot of time that we spent before the AI-powered solution, like we spent on like reading, checking with lawyers and discussing. And now automated tool helps us to extract those paragraphs that we have to be careful about or make sure that this is aligned with the policies. And one example from our customers, because that was like what we do in future processing for us. But for our customers, we work on predicting the value of a heavy machinery. So imagine you are a company that purchase a lot of equipment that work on the construction site, like building roads, or constructing buildings or rebuilding, whatever. And then after projects are done, you want to resell those equipment, and that equipment value is dropping. And based on prediction and predictive analytics, you can actually predict what is the specific time point when you should start selling those machines. So you want to look for the optimal time point when this machine or machinery should be put on the market, and you should start using a new one. So you don't want to go beyond that point, because then the value will decrease quickly, and you don't want to sell those equipment before that time point, because the value is still okay. So that's one of the example. And a little bit like quite of a simple one, a lot of our customers are conducting a lot of meetings. We help them to pick up the AI tools that can actually prepare meetings, transcribe meetings, and follow up meetings semi-automatically, because it's never 100% automatic. Something like you can also, because heavy machinery thing, it's more like a big project for many months, but those like optimizing processes where there's a lot of manual work that increase the team's productivity. It's also what we've seen, like getting sticky and bringing ROI very quickly. Because if you remove a lot of manual activities from people's calendars, like scheduling, follow-upping, and transcribing meetings, you basically save a lot of money, and that money can be allocated, that time can be allocated more challenging, more creative jobs. So we see stuff like that. I really like the example, by the way, from Alison about overbooking, because overbooking is basically predicting. So you can predict, I mean, not basically, but it's touched to be predicting. You can predict a lot when it comes to how many people will walk in your store or your clinic, or how many cars will show up in the parking lot. And we see that taking off too. So companies keep asking more and more about predicting different events so they can prepare for them or optimize the cost of handling them.
I wish the airlines were a bit better at predicting the no-shows. So
I agree.
Avoid the
I agree that
the confusion at the airport.
If there is an airline ports there or in the industry, we might have a solution for you guys.
Yeah, I think everyone had situations on the airport. Yeah.
As a customer.
Thank you all for sharing cases where you use AI. And of course, AI is technology. It's fascinating. It's something new that we see, especially we talk about AI in, let's say, 2023 was mostly about what is happening with this particular technology. But as every technology, there are some advantages. There are some things that are still not perfect. So can you please share some information? Are there maybe any instances where certain AI applications did not deliver the expected results, and what were the key learnings from those experiences? Alison, how about you? How about your company? Were there any situations like this?
Sure. I mean, I think we're still really in the infancy stage of AI, but actually I have a slightly different example. The AI actually delivered the expected results, but the people that didn't necessarily. Our challenges to date have really been workforce and workflow related. So even though we're automating things, I think we can't discount the fact that a lot of times we still need human involvement. And some of the challenges we have been around that, just getting the right workflow. So let's use the case of diabetic retinopathy. it works best when the patient's already in the clinic. So if you're a patient that needs to have an eye exam and you haven't done it yet, what's the right time to grab that patient? Is it before the appointment? Is it after the appointment? How do we get the most compliance from patients and also from providers? So those have been really our biggest challenges, not the technology, but just developing the best workflow to maximize the use of the technology.
Yeah, I think with all the technologies, you need to make sure that you know how to use it. And I think everyone believes that we can't have only AI. We have to remember about this human touch. So just learning how to work with it, how to use this technology to benefit most from it. Karolis, what about you? Are there any missing parts, bits and pieces in AI that you hope will change?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of panic by folks that maybe don't understand the technology well enough, that their jobs are going to be replaced. I kind of don't share that same sentiment. I know in the accounting world, a lot of folks feel that, you know, AI is going to replace all the things that we do, which I think brings me to an element that doesn't particularly work well currently. So the generative AI tools, the way that I view them is they have the capabilities of an intern. You can kind of tell them to do something and they'll go and do it, and they'll bring you back a product, but they don't always know what they brought back, and it's not always correct or it's not always complete. I think the completeness part is probably most important here. I've seen some experiments where folks have taken the entirety of the Internal Revenue Code and have fed it into some of these language models. The outcomes are, I guess, a bit underwhelming. I would say that the outcome serves more as a glorified search engine than anything else, because the AI hasn't been trained on the data in the way that a human is trained on the Internal Revenue Code. So a human kind of has some foundational knowledge of, you know, these particular code sections describe this particular kind of element that, or this foundational knowledge that's very core to understanding the rest of the tax code. Whereas the AI kind of views the entirety of the text as kind of a single item, and it's very good at kind of finding things that we'll call kind of short distance questions, but it's not good at relating kind of long-term connections of, here's a foundational concept. How does this foundational concept relate to another foundational concept? Because the question that I'm asking isn't exactly spelled out in the Internal Revenue Code. The Internal Revenue Code is kind of a living, breathing document that's been kind of changed by case law, or case law defines how some of the code is interpreted. You know, we're able to apply parts of the tax code that are at this point, you know, 50 to 100 years old, to modern kind of issues. So the way that it's written is very kind of broad in general, and the AI is not able to make those long-term connections just because it doesn't have the foundational knowledge. So I think a lot of these more complicated issues are going to take time to develop. That's been, I think, the big kind of eye opener for me, is that there's a lot of things that professionals do that are currently at no risk of being replaced by AI.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this, Karolis. I think there is kind of stress that people are trying to understand what AI is, and are afraid that AI will just take the jobs. That's something that is being widely discussed. So thank you for sharing your perspective on this one. Arek, what about you when it comes to some maybe disadvantages or some things that are still missing when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I like all the examples, really, and I'll tell you why. I'll start with the two examples. The recent one that was published on Twitter, the example when the guy in UK started talking to, I think that was a United Parcel Service chatbot on the website, something like that, and eventually the guy, a random customer, twisted the chatbot, and the chatbot started to criticize the company. And it's like, it's not a big deal that the chatbot of UPS started criticizing UPS, because the brand is a brand, and I don't think chatbot is going to destroy the reputation of UPS, but it shows. And the company explained that there was an upgrade in the chatbot, and that upgrade brought that, I don't know how to call it, like flaw, hallucination level, whatever. So it shows us the necessity of monitoring the process, and AI requires even more monitoring than other solutions, because it keeps learning based on the data. So there is always opportunity for mistakes. I want to call it opportunity, because then you can relearn that, fine-tune that chatbot and improve it. So that's one thing. But second, very fascinating, because University of Texas at Dallas has a strong AI presence here, and we are close to communities here as a future processing, and they were conducting a very, very interesting research. They want a ChatGPT 3.4, ChatGPT 4, and BART from Google fill up the tax deduction form. So if you want to fill up the tax deduction form that the CPAs are doing, you really need to make sure that all the details are in place and everything stick to the law, because otherwise you might have the kind of the financial constraints, or I don't want to say penalties, but you might be in trouble, and you don't want to do that as a company. So they anonymize the data, they upload data to those three engines and ask the engine for starting a calculation. So 3.5 really, really screwed up the job. It was really bad. But that's not the problem. The problem is that BART and ChatGPT 4 was almost right. And that almost, it's a very, very interesting part. And I want to mention that, because you ask Anya for cases that AI doesn't work. And according to different research, only 50 to 20% of AI solutions go to a production, which means that 75, 80% stand in the experimentation phase. And Alison was very, very gentle to say they are at the beginning of the journey. But I think everybody is there, not because people are not learning enough, but because putting an AI product on the production, it's very difficult, and because it requires a lot of experimenting. And then what I'm trying to say here is that when we're working with AI models, generative AI, we need to be aware of the fact that most of them are giving, not all of them are giving us a prediction. They predict the next word or the next token, what is called. What it means by that, it's a prediction. And sometimes customers are expecting precision, which is completely not the part of the AI. And the Stanford University, they run interesting research saying that the best AI models that are available today through solutions like ChatGPT, like Google Gemini, the best of all of them, like for instance, Llama 2, developed by Facebook, former Facebook, now Meta, it's still guessing 20% of the answers. And that's very, very, very interesting part, because it means that it needs people, it needs monitoring, and it's in improvements all of the time. So we cannot really, let AI going its own way. It still requires us. It still requires monitoring, and I think that's create endless opportunities for business. And one more example that I've learned yesterday was, if AI is creating images, like images of food, interior, cars, people, those images are still not very good in details. They look beautiful, they're very polished, very, I would say, excellent. But if you want to create your restaurant menu using diffusion models, you have to be very careful, because that food is going to look completely different in your website than in reality, even if it's looked similar. So a lot of great areas that I found very, very interesting for putting a lot of improvement and optimizing the space, which requires a lot of talent, people, and effort.
Thank you, Arek. Yeah,
I just want
Karolis?
to piggyback on something that he said. I think the image generators are a great example of the training data is of utmost importance. And the data that went into something like
Yes.
ChatGPT, or at least the first iterations of ChatGPT, has been generated by human beings. So, you know, we are kind of
Correct.
relying on human being, you know, text and words and kind of the way that things are phrased
Yes.
to train the models. But I think what's becoming increasingly relevant on the internet is the fact that a lot of content on the internet is now generated by something like ChatGPT. So what we're going to end up seeing is the corpus of what these models are being trained on is going to be content that's generated by AI models. And if you kind of look at this in the context of an image, if you use a human-based image to kind of generate an AI image, the result is going to be pretty good. If you use that AI image to create another AI image, you might lose some fidelity. And the more times that you kind of go through this process, the more, I guess, kind of skewed the outcome will become. So if you start with a picture of a horse, by, you know, generation 3 or 4, the horse might have 3 legs, and the AI doesn't know right or wrong, and it's just going to kind of keep propagating that error.
And I think just to add to that,
exactly.
Sorry, just to interrupt, I think to add to what Karolis was just saying is, especially from a healthcare perspective, I think it's going to be so important that the source of the algorithm is transparent, right? The AI systems could obviously inherit bias from the data that they're trained on. So the data quality is really, really critical, because if the data that it's trained on is biased or lacks diversity, as he was mentioning before, the AI system is really just going to continue to perpetuate those biases. And as someone that's spent really their entire career in a community health center seeing patients with a lot of different challenges, including socioeconomic challenges, the models have to have been trained on diverse populations or similar populations for them to have value if we're using them. So that's super important to us. So for example, the dermatology app we use was trained, it's used worldwide, it's trained on different skin colors. So obviously what it looks like on me could be very different than what this rash appears like on somebody else. So I think that's really, really super important to keep in mind.
And one thing it triggered is, like, since we're talking about AI and productivity, I want to say about one case that works 90% of the time. It's like people that are working a lot with charts, slides, things like our visuals. And sometimes imagine the use case that you are like participating in a webinar like that one, but we use slides, or you are at the lecture, or somebody's explaining complicated stuff. I'll give you a really use case that will actually improve your productivity a lot. Even yesterday, I was participating in the AIWS workshop, and they were explaining really, really complex structure of how they use AI models and other things to deliver them under the AWS AI solutions. As a consultant, we want to understand many tools from Google, Microsoft, AWS, because we want to objectively help our customers. So anyway, yesterday, the guy was like showing a huge slide with a lot of details. What I did by that, I snapped a picture of this and I put that to Bard and the ChatGPT just to tell me what is on the slide and explain me all the details that the presenter did not explain. And this case works perfectly. ChatGPT, Bard, Perplexity, whatever we use as an interface, can quickly understand what is on the slide, can put them on the text, even if you have an image, and quickly explain you the specifics of that. So what is that on the slide? Who is there? What is this book about? Things like that. So that's the use cases that are really in place. You can implement them today, and they will remove a lot of manual tasks you have to do, because what's option is to listen and take notes and snap a picture and then come back home and try to dig in. And all that job can be done by foundation models. So very interesting use case in AI productivity. Since we experiment a lot in future processing with AI and we do a lot of stuff and charts, things like that. So this is the one stuff. Only one disclaimer, obviously, you cannot upload privacy or, data of your customers or even faces. So be careful with that. But other stuff, it's very, very useful.
Thank you, Arek. I really like also the idea of the horse with 3 legs when we talk about imperfections. Thank you, Alison, for sharing information on your tool for dermatologists. It's great that it's all about data. So thanks for sharing how you taught the AI, sharing all the information, different skin types, making sure that the engine has all the needed data to help you diagnose. But we can't forget this human touch in whatever industry we are. If it's painting, if it's healthcare or something totally else. 2023 was packed with AI. There was a lot about it, and it's very tricky and very difficult to guess what will happen in 2024 with this technology, because it's really being developed very quickly. When you think about your industries and your needs, can you share some dreams or some things that are really missing right now, and your expectations, something that you would love AI to be able to or help you with, let's say in December 24? Any ideas what's the direction that we are going to? Alison, maybe you first. Do you have any ideas how it could develop and help you even better than it's helping right now?
Sure, there's 2 areas I really look forward to using it in. One is, I think with the advent and implementation years ago of electronic health records, a lot was lost in terms of the provider-patient relationship. I think a lot of time is spent staring at the computer and not as much quality time spent with the patient. So I think I really look forward to these ambient listening programs that will help the provider document their visit. I think so much time is concentrated doing that, and using ambient listening, having AI document the majority of the visit and have the provider just confirm it's accurate and sign off on it is something I really look forward to. I think it will really help restore the relationship between the provider and the patient. So I think this is one big opportunity. The other opportunity I look for, again, comes back to patient access and using predictive analytics, helping us really fine-tune which patients are at greatest risk for getting sicker, being able to intervene on patients before they develop disease. So, who's at greatest risk of developing kidney disease or diabetes, and being able to have an intervention at the right time for the right patient at the right time, prior to the full-blown disease state.
So we're talking about productivity predictions again with AI. I hope it goes into that direction. But thanks for sharing this idea about being more human. So we spend a lot of time typing, making documents, and sometimes, especially when it comes to healthcare, we would love the doctor to be more personal, because I think there's a lot of documents that has to be done, and sometimes we forget about this personal touch that is so important, however the technology is developed in future. So thank you for sharing your dreams. I hope we go into that direction. Karolis, what about you? Any ideas? Let's say December 2024, what will happen then in your imagination?
Yeah, so I think, you dial back the clock a year. We've come a long way in a year. AI is kind of multiplying how far we can go per unit of time. So I do think we're going to cover a lot more ground. The things that will kind of have to be, I think, resolved is this idea of a lot of data has been somewhat democratized and out there on the internet that these models were trained on. I do think there's going to be an increased focus on private institutions and public institutions not putting out as much data into the open, just because if you train a model on kind of the same corpus of data, all of the models will generally converge in performance on the same answer. So I think what's going to become increasingly important is adding in that special data that you have that somebody else may not have to increase the performance of your models. I think the other element that's going to become very important is kind of for institutions and for companies that are looking to make use of machine learning and AI, it's going to become increasingly important to connect the various data sources that they may already have. You know, in the context of a accounting firm, it might be, you know, the practice management modules with the workflow modules, with the tax software, kind of making all of these different tools talk to each other. That is something that's still kind of missing. We can obviously do that currently. The issue is that a lot of it isn't done kind of on this, you know, automated AI type of model. It's more so done by human beings and traditional methods. The other element I think that I'm hoping to kind of see is what I will call a transition from the generalist models. So there's a lot of language learning models that kind of do a particular, you know, they're pretty good for general purpose, but they're not very good at being specialists in a particular area. So I think when we have this conversation in a year, we will come to a point where folks will have had time to develop, and we'll be developing particular kind of specialized tools for particular issues. You know, I'm not sure if we'll get to a point where the entirety of the tax code is understood by the AI model, but we might get to a point where particular sections that apply to, let's say, the real estate industry are kind of well understood by the model, and we can kind of ask specific questions and get specific answers, because right now that's not really possible the way that things are structured. So I think we're going to see a lot of progress on that front over the coming year.
Thank you, Karolis, and thank you for sharing this idea about companies working together, somehow using AI and its possibilities for general work with all of them, sharing data, of course, the data that can be shared, still having this in mind, but for sure it will accelerate the development of AI and how it can benefit different organizations. Arek, what about you? December 2024. What are your dreams?
I'm a super bad futurologist, and you know, but I can tell you this based on the facts we see working with our customers. First example is like most of us probably remember Steve Jobs as a guy wearing a black turtleneck and the same New Balance shoes every single day for a couple of years. And there is an assumption that people do that because they want to remove a lot of decisions that are not actually contributing to their mission. And so they want to remove decisions to something. I'll tell you in a minute what I'm thinking about that. And they want to focus on the stuff that really matters for them. That's one fact. The second fact I want to bring up from the history is Google Maps. Everybody's complaining about sharing too much information online, but not everybody is trying to switch off Google Maps real-life tracking if you want to see the traffic. So there is a trend that we easily get data to companies as a trade for the value. In this case, prediction of how fast you will get to the point B from point A is that trade-off. Why I'm just bringing up those examples is because artificial intelligence is doing every year one single thing better and better. It's predicting, and I like the examples that Alison mentioned about like predicting patients conditions or overbooking, because predictions are getting cheaper. What I mean by that, usually the components of every AI project is about hardware. You need good hardware, like CPUs or graphic cards, whatever your infrastructure is, to get that calculation going. Then you need a storage for data, and you need a transfer. So which means you send data over the internet or whatever your network is, and then you need AI model that need to be trained on that data. So all of that together is getting cheaper. The hardware is getting cheaper because there's more and more companies, except for NVIDIA or Amazon, doing their own stuff, building their own hardware. And so there's a higher competition and the prices are dropping. When it comes to storage, it almost became the commodity. When it comes to network transfer, you just pay what you can eat, which means a consumption-based model, and you buy tokens. And those tokens are getting cheaper and cheaper. Why? And that's fascinating fact. Because there is more and more artificial intelligence trained or pre-trained model that are available. A couple of years ago, we have ChatGPT with open AI model, but now we have Facebook, Meta, Hugging Face, which is a huge marketplace of AI models trained and pre-trained for specific goals. So everything is dropping down. All this stuff is built to predict the patient's going, predict the patient's conditions, predict your FIDO score, predicting when there is going to be a huge traffic. Even apps for fishing, like anglers, are predicting the best spot when you can show up for fishing. It's because they accumulate millions of data points from millions of fishing guys that are snapping picture of the fish they caught and uploading to the website. So combining that with location, temperature, weather, you can predict the next spot. So what I'm trying to, I'm not saying I'm predicting what will happen, because I'm bad in, when it comes to future. I don't want to be a futurologist here, but down to the earth, I see that the price of prediction is dropping down. And as Steve Jobs, we want to move decisions to something. So we can easily get that decision about next marketing email, next marketing campaign, or next project milestone. We will easily give that to ChatGPT, Bard, or whatever, Gemini, to design that for us, instead of working on that for hours and designing like a step-by-step in manual way. So I see more companies investing because they want the predictions. And that Google example, the Maps example, is telling me that we will not be afraid to upload data to ChatGPTs and others, obviously anonymized, privacy respected, because there is a huge trade-off. Imagine this: if I am a guy that stays in a home and my wife left, and I don't know what to cook for a dinner, I'm just an example, and I have a couple products in the fridge. So why thinking like I can tell ChatGPT I have this and that, fix me a dinner, and I'll cook it for myself. So what I need is like the idea. There's a huge trade-off. I will share that data with the ChatGPT to give me that answer. And if you extend that for other examples, predicting value, predicting where sales allocation should go, predicting churn, predicting price, I see more predictions coming because price is dropping. And we all, most of us, want to go the Steve Jobs way of removing that decision from everyday life and focusing on more strategic, more risky things, which we don't have time for.
Thank you, Arek. I wish you delicious meals prepared together with AI. I pity fish a bit, to be honest, but I believe AI can be used in very different occasions to help us.
Of course.
Right now we have the Q&A session. So thank you for amazing discussion, Alison, Karolis, and Arek, and for sharing all your experiences and cases.
Thank you.
We have a question from Wagner, who's interested in the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning. Who of our amazing speakers would like to give the answer? Karolis, would you?
Yeah. So I think in my view, this is mostly semantics. The public likes the idea of artificial intelligence, but when you boil down all the generative models, all of these kind of predictions, you're really just getting down to kind of stats and math. And machine learning is really kind of the process by which the calculations happen and the models are trained. But I think the public overall just likes the idea of artificial intelligence. I think kind of pulling back that curtain on the Wizard of Oz and thinking that it's artificial intelligence is probably helpful, because once you understand that it's math and stats, then the outputs start to make a bit more sense. Something like ChatGPT is a probabilistic model, and most of these models are probabilistic, as Arcadius was saying. And what that really means is when you get an output from one of these models, you should really put the word probably in front of it before you kind of start to interpret what's happening there. Kind of remembering that the output is a probably helps you kind of understand that, you need to review what's in there more specifically.
Thank you, Karolis. We have another question in the chat. What are the main dangers and challenges linked to artificial intelligence? I think it can be answered by all of you, so I would like all of you to share what are the dangers and challenges linked to artificial intelligence in your industries. Alison, healthcare, please.
Sure. I think for ours, it's I guess I'll call it laziness, right? Not having to read or continue to learn or continue to improve yourself and just relying or assuming that the AI is correct. I think there are hallucinations. I think you can't always certainly rely on it 100%. So I think I think we can't become complacent, and I see it happening with my kids. Like, I'll just put in ChatGPT, I'll just look it up, like, rather than trying to learn it and continue to improve and enhance your skills, becoming a little lazy or complacent is one of my fears.
Thank you, Alison. Arek, what in your opinion are the dangers and challenges?
Yeah, I want to start with something that I don't think really happen. I don't think like AI will cut jobs. I think it will reframe them, and it will require from us a lot of studying and learning to understand how our roles can still contribute value. Like, it will not remove drivers, but maybe a driving job will change. Instead of sitting behind the wheel, you'll be doing something different. But speaking about challenges, first one is I believe AI can bring a lot of good, but it requires very, very ethical leadership in the business and companies. And I think is a danger that some leaders might not grasp AI enough to. I don't have a doubt they are ethical people, but I think they might not pay enough attention to the AI, and that leadership in an ethical way cannot be really unfolded. Second is something I mentioned, Stanford research, 20% of the best AI model on the market still guessing 20. And I think that influenced everything from predicting machine value, from predicting your next meeting, for scheduling your meetings, everything. We really need to think about mostly semi-automation, that full automation, and be aware of the fact that we need that those are tools, and those tools are still really, really imperfect, which obviously opens a lot of opportunities. And the third danger is I'm still thinking about people that are not very technological, that they are that they will be influenced. Imagine by better technology. Imagine like your Airbnb app that is now suggesting locations and things like that based on AI. And I wish I could see more courses for like people like my mom, my dad, even maybe my grandma, that she will be influenced by that, like face recognition, face tracking, things like this. I think there's a little bit of the danger that these people might use the AI in a way they don't want to use it. So that's sometimes get my attention, because everybody here is kind of like, working in a business, changing the business, improving processes. But there are people also that are like kind of like getting what is on the market. So I wish I could see more courses, things like that for maybe 50 plus 60. I don't want to put everybody in the same bucket, but something like that.
Thank you, Arek. Karolis, what about dangers and challenges in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think just to kind of echo what Alison was saying is over-reliance is probably the biggest, I guess, hurdle that folks need to clear. We should view AI and machine learning as a tool and not have it replace what we do, but supplement what we do. So you can't just take the output that you get and use that as, the be-all, end-all. We've seen examples of attorneys kind of generating documentation for courts where it cited cases that weren't actual real cases, and that kind of came to light, and this particular attorney was disbarred, but that's just an example of somebody that's kind of taking the output and using it as their own work and not really putting in any effort into kind of the product. So over relying on that is I think a significant downfall. We should kind of use the tools, to learn and multiply and expand what we can do, but it's certainly not a replacement for human judgment and kind of technical know-how.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry to say it, but actually the time is up for the webinar, and the discussion was really interesting. I really think that we should meet here in December 2024 or even earlier to see what's happening with AI and if our predictions and ideas were good. I hope that there will be a lot of interesting things happening. If you have any more questions to our guests, please feel free to reach to them directly. In a moment, you will see their LinkedIn profiles. So feel free to reach to Alison, Karolis, and Arek with all your questions that you might have regarding AI, how they use it, or their companies, because they all shared some information or on the companies that they are working at. Once again, thank you for joining us. Thanks to all our amazing speakers for sharing your experience. It was really, really interesting to have this discussion. Big thanks to Strategic Business Alliance with Arnaldo Carrera and all the attendees. It's great to discuss AI and all the technologies that are appearing right now. That's all for today. I wish you a great day. I'm really happy to see that you enjoyed the webinar. So hope to invite you and to see you as guests again in different ones that I hope we will organize pretty soon.
Thank you for everybody's time.
Thank you so much for doing this. Have a great day, guys. Enjoy it.